The forgotten legends. The galaxy was filled with countless races, each with its own history, culture, and pride. Many believed they were the first and greatest, that their people were the center of all knowledge and strength. Yet hidden deep within the records of the oldest civilizations, there were strange writings. They spoke of a species that once walked the stars with fire in their hands and storms in their eyes. The name was old, the details unclear. But every record used the same word, humans. The stories were vague. Some called them saviors, others called them monsters. Some claimed humans once saved entire worlds from destruction. Others whispered that humans brought ruin wherever they went. Whatever the truth was, the tales agreed on one thing. If humanity ever returned, the galaxy would tremble. But time has a way of changing belief into doubt. Centuries passed, empires rose and fell, and the warnings became nothing more than stories told to children. Scholars who tried to study the legends were mocked. Leaders laughed at the very idea of a hidden power sleeping somewhere in the void. The galaxy believed the age of humans was nothing but myth. On the planet Verdanus, a historian named Kalian sat in the ruins of a forgotten temple. His hands brushed against the old stone walls, tracing carvings older than his empire itself. The carvings showed figures unlike any alien he had seen. Tall, broad, with sharp eyes that seemed to pierce through the centuries. Above the carvings were words in ancient script. Kalian translated them with a shaking voice. "Fear the day when the humans walk again, for the stars will burn." Kalian felt a chill. He had studied these ruins for decades. He knew the galaxy laughed at such things. But as he stared at the stone, he could not laugh. He felt the weight of something real, something waiting. He returned to the Senate halls of the Galactic Union to present his findings. He spoke with passion, his voice echoing in the chamber. "The warnings are not myths, they are records of history. We must prepare." The senators, dressed in shining robes and surrounded by guards, burst into laughter. One of them stood and said, "Old man, you waste our time. Do you expect us to believe in fairy tales? Do you want us to fear shadows of a race no one has ever seen?" Another added with a grin, "Maybe these humans live under your bed. Do they wait for children to cry?" The chamber erupted with jokes. The warnings of humanity became entertainment. Kalian's heart sank. He could see their arrogance, their blindness. He tried again. "The ruins do not lie, the ancient records do not lie. The galaxy has forgotten, but the humans are real." His words were silenced by the hammer of the Chancellor. "Enough, scholar. We do not govern based on ghost stories." That night, Kalian sat alone in his study. Staring at the stars beyond the window, he whispered to himself, "Why do they not see? Why do they laugh? The old words are true. One day humanity will return, and when they do, it will be too late." Far across the galaxy, in a quiet corner of space, a ship drifted in silence. Its design was unlike anything known to the Union. Its metal surface carried scars of battles long forgotten. Inside, frozen in stasis, were figures with familiar faces. Human faces, their eyes were closed, their chests still. Yet machines kept them alive, waiting. The stars moved slowly around them. Time passed, but the ship endured. It waited in the darkness like a predator hidden in tall grass. The galaxy laughed at legends, but the legends were real. Back on Verdanus, Kalian closed his book and leaned back. He wondered if he was the only one who still believed. He wondered if, when the day came, anyone would even remember his warnings. In his heart, he knew the answer. The galaxy would laugh as it always did, until the laughter turned to screams. The forgotten legends remained carved in stone, ignored by rulers and dismissed by the powerful. But truth does not vanish because it is ignored. It waits, silent, patient, ready to rise when the time is right. The humans were not gone, they were only sleeping. The first signs, the galaxy drifted in peace, or at least in the illusion of peace. Fleets patrolled the borders, trade flowed between stars, and the great Senate spoke of prosperity. Yet at the edge of known space, things began to happen. Quiet things that no one wanted to notice. It started with a single patrol fleet. The Vorian Empire had sent 12 warships into the Outer Rim to investigate disappearing colonies. The last transmission was a scream, cut off in static. No wreckage was ever found. No survivors returned, the fleet simply vanished, leaving only silence behind. The Vorian leaders told the people it was a navigational accident. They said the ships must have flown into a dark energy storm. They promised no enemy had been found. They spoke confidently, but in private they were shaken. They had reviewed the final signal, and in the background of the static, a strange voice could be heard. It was calm, deep, and carried words in a language their translators struggled to decode. But one word came clear. Human. Other signs followed. On the moon of Zadran, miners reported tunnels collapsing with no warning. When rescue teams arrived, the tunnels were not filled with rock, but with cleanly cut walls as though something had sliced through the stone with fire. On a colony world called Narlis, the sky burned red for 3 days, satellites falling one after another as if struck by invisible hands. Merchants whispered rumors, explorers told tales. At first, these stories were dismissed as lies told for attention. Yet slowly, patterns formed. Ships disappeared in the same sectors. Colonies were cut off, and every report ended the same way, with silence. Kalian, the old historian, watched the news with trembling hands. He recognized the signs from the texts he had studied. The ancient records spoke of sudden disappearances, burning skies and voices in the static. "These are the first warnings," he whispered. "The first signs of their return." He begged once again for the Senate to listen. He showed them the evidence, maps of missing fleets, recordings of strange voices, testimonies from survivors. But the senators only laughed louder. "You see ghosts in smoke, old man," they told him. "There is no enemy, these are accidents." Nothing more, but not everyone laughed. In the military, some commanders grew uneasy. Admiral Tharn, leader of the Union Defense Fleet, sat in his war room studying the reports. He had fought many battles, and his instincts told him these were not accidents. He replayed the last message from the Vorian fleet over and over. That voice haunted him, calm and cold, and though he could not understand the language, the word human echoed in his mind. Meanwhile, in the farthest corner of the void, small outposts began to send desperate messages. One said, "They came in silence, they came with fire before it was cut off." Another showed a glimpse of a massive ship, black as the night with weapons that glowed like suns. The recording lasted only seconds, but it was enough to terrify anyone who saw it. Still, the galaxy chose to close its eyes. The merchants feared panic, the leaders feared rebellion, the people feared the truth. So they laughed at the idea of humans. They mocked Kalian. They silenced the commanders who questioned too much. They clung to their illusion of peace, but in the shadows whispers grew. Children repeated old songs about the firewalkers. Pilots swore they saw human faces in the stars. Miners claimed to hear footsteps in the dark tunnels. The forgotten legends were no longer forgotten. They were becoming real again. One night, Kalian sat by the window of his study. Staring at the stars, he remembered the carvings, the warnings written in stone. His voice shook as he spoke to himself. "They are coming. The signs are here." The galaxy laughs, but soon the galaxy will cry. Far away, on the drifting human ship, machines began to hum. Lights flickered on after centuries of silence. The frozen humans inside their stasis chambers stirred. Their hearts began to beat again. Their eyes twitched beneath closed lids. The ship, long silent, awakened. The first signs were no longer whispers. They were warnings carved into reality. The galaxy had ignored the legends, but the legends had not ignored the galaxy. Laughter in the halls of power. The Senate chamber of the Galactic Union was a place of glittering marble, soaring arches and the sound of endless debate. Here the fate of worlds was decided, or at least that was what the senators liked to believe. They wore robes of wealth, they carried symbols of authority, and they spoke with voices full of pride. On this day, the chamber was filled to the brim. The reports of missing fleets and strange signals had reached every world. Panic was rising among the people. Demands for answers echoed across the stars. The Chancellor called a meeting to calm the masses. He promised clarity, he promised truth. Kalian was invited, though not as a respected scholar. He was invited as a spectacle. They called him the Old Prophet, a title meant to mock. He entered the hall with scrolls, tablets, and data crystals. His hands shook, but his eyes burned with fire. He was ready to speak the truth once more. He stood at the center, his voice echoing. The legends spoke of this, the ruins warned of this. Humanity is returning. They are not myth. They are not shadows. They are real, and they are here. For a moment, silence filled the chamber. Then the laughter began. Senator Drelis, a tall figure with jeweled horns, rose and smirked. "Humanity," he said, his voice dripping with amusement. "An ancient bedtime story, told by crumbling ruins and desperate old men. Do you truly wish us to believe that these primitive myths are the cause of our troubles?" The crowd chuckled. Another senator added, Perhaps these humans stole the stars as well. Perhaps they drink our oceans while we sleep. Tell me, Kellyan, do your ghosts hide under our beds? The chamber burst into full laughter. Kellyan's face flushed with anger. You fools, he cried. You laugh at fire while standing in dry grass. You mock the warnings because you do not wish to fear. But fear is coming whether you welcome it or not. The Chancellor banged his staff against the floor. Enough, he commanded. We are not children to be frightened by ghost stories. The disappearances are accidents. The signals are tricks of the void. We will not allow superstition to guide our empire. Kellyan's voice dropped, low and heavy. You will regret this when the humans arrive. No laughter will save you. But his words were drowned again. Senators mimicked him, repeating the word humans in mocking tones. Their laughter rolled through the chamber like thunder. They turned truth into comedy, fear into entertainment. Admiral Tharn sat in the corner, silent. His eyes did not laugh. He had seen too many battles to ignore the signs. The voice in the static haunted him still. While the chamber mocked, he leaned toward one of his officers and whispered, Prepare the fleet quietly, do not wait for orders. Something is coming outside the Senate. The galaxy followed the example of its leaders. News channels mocked the human myth. Cartoons showed little creatures called humans running from shadows. Children laughed at school plays that portrayed humans as bumbling fools. The galaxy turned the warnings into jokes, and the people laughed to hide their fear. But in the corners of space, laughter died quickly on the planet Narlis. Survivors spoke of black ships in the sky on the moon Zadrin. Miners swore they saw pale figures watching from the shadows. Explorers whispered of colonies turned to ash with no sign of weapons they understood. The truth was spreading, but it was drowned beneath the roar of jokes in the halls of power. Kellyan left the Senate with heavy steps. His shoulders slumped, yet his eyes still burned. He knew the galaxy was blind. He knew pride had sealed their fate. Standing at the steps of the chamber, he whispered to the sky. They laughed at the flood. Until the water rose above their heads, they laugh now, but soon their laughter will turn to screams. And in the cold darkness beyond the rim, the human ship stirred again. Systems came alive, more chambers opened. Figures moved within the stasis pods, breathing their first breaths in centuries. Their eyes flickered open, sharp and unyielding. The humans were awakening. The galaxy mocked the name. But the name was real. Humanity had returned. The horror reveals itself. The galaxy had laughed for too long. But laughter is fragile. It cracks the moment fear becomes undeniable. That moment came without warning at the edge of Vorian space. A trade convoy drifted through the void. 30 ships filled with supplies. Guarded by a small fleet of escorts, their journey was routine. Their shields strong, their captains confident. Then the stars vanished. A shadow swallowed the convoy. It was not a storm, not a nebula, it was a ship. A vessel so vast that its outline blocked entire constellations. Its hull was black as the void, with scars etched deep into its armor. Symbols were burned into its surface, strange marks no alien could read. Weapons glowed like suns ready to fire. The escorts panicked. Their sensors screamed with warnings. Unknown vessel detected. The system repeated again and again. Commanders barked orders. Ships scrambled into position. But before they could fire, the shadow moved. A single beam of light erupted, bright enough to blind sensors. It cut through the lead escort ship as though it were paper. The vessel broke apart in silence, fragments scattering across the stars. A second beam fired, then a third within moments. 5 ships were gone. The convoy screamed for help, their transmissions flooding the comms. Unknown hostile, unstoppable firepower. We cannot. The signal ended in static, on the Vorian homeworld. Officials stared at the empty screens in horror. The convoy had been erased, not defeated, but erased. Admiral Tharn received the report in his war room. His eyes narrowed as the recording played. The massive black ship filled the screen, and then came the voice, calm, deep, spoken in words the translators barely understood. Humanity returns, Tharn froze. He had heard that voice before, in the static of the lost fleet. Now there was no denying it. Humanity was not myth, humanity was not shadow. Humanity was here. The Senate, however, tried to cling to its laughter. It is only one ship, they declared. One vessel cannot threaten the Union, we have thousands. They ignored the silence of the Vorian convoy. They ignored the terror in the voices of the survivors. They drowned their fear in pride, but pride could not stop the next attack. At the colony of Trilus Prime, The people woke to a sky filled with fire. Dozens of human ships descended, silent and cold. Their weapons spoke before their voices did. Shield networks collapsed in seconds. Orbital defense platforms exploded in bursts of light. Within hours, Trallis Prime was ash. Its cities burned, its towers toppled, its people vanished into smoke. Kalian heard the news from his small study. His hands shook as he gripped the old scrolls. "The horror," he whispered. "The horror they promised has arrived." He closed his eyes and remembered the ancient carvings. The words carved in stone. "Fear the day when the humans walk again." Now that day had come. Across the galaxy, panic spread. Merchants abandoned trade routes. Soldiers deserted their posts. Citizens whispered in terror. The laughter that once filled the chambers of power turned into silence. Leaders held emergency meetings, their faces pale. For the first time, the galaxy realized it was not the master of the stars. It was prey. Admiral Tharn stood before the fleet. His voice was steady but grim. "We face an enemy we do not understand. They are not myth. They are not rumor. They are human, and they are beyond anything we have faced before. We cannot underestimate them, or we will not survive." But even as he spoke, the horror spread further. Black ships appeared in more sectors. Colonies fell one after another. Fleets vanished without trace. The galaxy tried to fight, but their weapons did little. Their shields broke. Their numbers meant nothing. Humanity fought with precision, with silence. With power carved from nightmares, the Senate halls grew quiet. The same senators who once mocked Kalian now sat trembling. They remembered their laughter and tasted the bitterness of regret. Kalian was summoned once more, not to be mocked, but to be begged for answers. He stood in the chamber, his voice low. "You laughed at fire, and now the fire burns your worlds. You mocked the warnings, and now the warnings stand before you. Humanity is not a myth. Humanity is the truth you feared, and the truth you ignored." The chamber did not laugh this time. They listened, but it was too late. The horror had already revealed itself. Humanity had awakened, and in the endless dark, more human ships stirred. Their engines roared like thunder. Their weapons glowed brighter. The galaxy had only seen the beginning. Panic and chaos. The galaxy was no longer laughing. It was screaming everywhere. Across every star system, chaos erupted. Trade lanes that once carried wealth now stood empty. Fleets that once patrolled with confidence now hesitated to leave their docks. The black ships of humanity appeared like ghosts, striking without warning, leaving only silence in their wake. World after world burned. On the colony of Moralis, the skies turned red as human weapons rained fire. The defenders lasted less than an hour. On the moon Calvorn, entire cities were erased in a single strike, leaving glass craters where millions had lived. Survivors spoke of soldiers, human soldiers, moving with perfect coordination. Silent and relentless, they did not boast. They did not taunt, they only destroyed. The Senate was paralyzed. Meetings stretched for hours, but no decisions came. Some senators cried for surrender, others demanded war, and many simply sat in fear. Their once great chamber of order was now a place of shouting. Broken pride and trembling hands, Kalian stood among them, his old voice cutting through the noise. "You see now what the legends warned. You see the price of arrogance. Humanity has come, and they are not the weak shadows you imagined. They are storms wearing flesh, and they will not be stopped by your pride." But his words did little. Fear had taken hold. Civilizations that once stood united began to turn against each other. Each empire sought to save itself. Some sealed their borders, abandoning allies to burn. Others tried to appease the humans, sending envoys into the void. But none ever returned. On the planet Zyros, panic became madness. Crowds stormed government halls, demanding answers, demanding protection. The leaders fled in secret ships, leaving their people behind. Riots filled the streets, fires burned unchecked, and the cries of children echoed in the night. Humanity had not even arrived yet, but the fear of them destroyed the world from within. Admiral Tharn watched the collapse with cold eyes. He had seen war, but never like this. "They do not even need to fight us," he whispered to his officers. "Our fear is the weapon, and it is sharper than any blade." Still, Tharn prepared. He gathered the few commanders who would listen. He spoke with quiet force. "We cannot wait for the Senate. We cannot wait for fools to argue while our people burn. Gather your fleets, rally your soldiers. Humanity is strong, but we must try. We fight, or we vanish." His words sparked a flame in some. Small fleets began to gather. Desperate alliances formed in shadows, but they were too few, too scattered, too late. The humans spread like a storm. They did not conquer in the way the galaxy understood. They did not demand oaths or banners. They erased, they silenced. They left ruins where thriving cities once stood, and they left warnings carved in fire. Simple words spoken in calm voices. This is humanity. Kalian sat alone in his chamber, listening to the endless reports of destruction. He closed his eyes and whispered, "The galaxy falls into chaos, just as the old stone said. Legends ignored become nightmares remembered." He felt no triumph, only sorrow. He had begged them to listen, but pride had deafened their ears. Now fear consumed them all. In the outer rim, survivors tried to flee. Entire families crammed into ships, fleeing to the farthest stars. But even there, safety was an illusion. Black ships appeared at the edges of their routes, watching, waiting. They did not always fire. Sometimes they only lingered, letting the refugees know they were never beyond reach. That fear was worse than death. The galaxy that once laughed now tore itself apart. Empires crumbled, armies broke, leaders hid. The chaos grew like a disease, spreading faster than the humans themselves. And still in the silent void, more human ships awoke. Systems came alive, engines roared. Soldiers opened their eyes after centuries of sleep. Humanity was no longer a whisper in ruins. Humanity was the storm that had arrived. The galaxy trembled, drowning in its own fear, and the panic was only the beginning. The last stand, the galaxy could not run forever. Panic had torn worlds apart. Fear had broken alliances, but even in chaos, survival demanded one last attempt, and so the call went out. A desperate cry across the stars, unite, or be erased. For the first time in centuries, empires that hated each other gathered in one place. The Vorian fleets, the Zyro swarms, the Trallis armadas, even the stubborn Council of Morales. They came with their warships, their carriers, their machines of destruction. They came with trembling pride. They called it the last stand. The gathering point was the system of Erevan, a fortress world surrounded by rings of defense stations. Tens of thousands of ships orbited the planet, their lights glittering like a second galaxy. Admirals spoke with forced confidence. Leaders made speeches of glory, but beneath their words, fear still lived. Admiral Tharn stood at the command deck of the Union flagship, his voice steady. "We do not fight for victory. We fight for survival. Humanity may be stronger, but we will not simply vanish. We will show them that the galaxy does not bow without a fight." His soldiers cheered, though the sound was thin. Then silence fell as the shadows arrived. At the edge of the system, the black ships of humanity appeared. Hundreds, then thousands, each moving with perfect precision. Their hulls bore scars of battles long past, yet their engines burned brighter than suns. The galaxy's fleets shifted nervously. Commanders shouting orders, lines forming, weapons primed. The first volley came from the aliens. A storm of missiles, beams, and plasma lit the void. The sky itself seemed to shatter under the fury. But when the light faded, the human ships still stood. Shields rippled, armor scorched, but their formation never broke. Then the humans answered. Their weapons were not like anything the galaxy had seen. Energy so focused it cut through dreadnoughts like knives through silk. Blades of light that sliced entire squadrons in seconds. Silent projectiles that struck without warning, tearing stations apart. The last stand became a massacre. Alien ships exploded one after another. Their formations collapsed. Their commanders screamed for order. But order could not be found. Panic spread faster than fire, fleets scattered, shields fell. And in minutes, thousands of ships were nothing but wreckage drifting in the void. Admiral Tharn fought with iron resolve. His flagship roared with fire, destroying 3 human vessels before flames consumed its hull. As his ship broke apart, he stood tall, whispering, "At least they will remember we tried." His voice was lost in static, but his courage lingered. Kalian watched the battle from the safety of Verdanis, his old heart heavy with grief. The images filled the broadcast screens, Erevan skies burning, fleets torn apart, proud empires reduced to ash. Tears slid down his face. "This is the last stand," he whispered, "and it is the last breath of the galaxy as it was." Some ships fought to the very end. Refusing to surrender, refusing to run, they hurled themselves into the human fleet, sacrificing everything for a chance to hurt the enemy. Their bravery was real, but it was not enough. Humanity fought with silence, with calm, with precision. Their war was not loud, it was absolute. The fortress world of Erevan itself fell within a day. Its rings shattered, its cities silenced, its people gone. Not even left to tell the tale, only ruins remained, floating among the wreckage of fleets. The last stand was over and the galaxy had lost. But the humans did not chase the fleeing survivors. Those who ran were allowed to live. Those who begged for mercy found none. Humanity did not conquer in the way the galaxy understood. They did not demand thrones or tribute. They only destroyed what they chose, leaving the rest trembling in fear across the stars. The survivors whispered of the battle. Some called it bravery, others called it futility, but all agreed on one thing. The galaxy had seen its full strength, and humanity was unstoppable. Kalian sat in silence that night, staring at the ruins broadcasted across the channels, his voice soft. The last stand has ended, and the galaxy has learned too late. Legends are not lies. Humanity is not myth, they are the storm. And no wall can stop the storm. And out in the void, the human fleet moved on. Silent, unshaken, their path was endless. Their war had only begun. The lesson too late. The Battle of Erevan was over. The galaxy had placed its pride, its strength and its hope into one moment, and humanity had crushed it. What remained was silence. A silence heavier than any weapon. Worlds that once glittered with lights now burned in darkness. Fleets that once stretched across the stars were reduced to drifting wrecks. Leaders who once laughed in shining halls now hid in shadows, afraid even to speak the word human. On Verdanus, Kalian sat at his desk, his hands trembling over the old scrolls he had studied for decades. He no longer needed the words carved in stone. The truth was written across the stars in fire and ruin. The legends were right, he whispered, his voice breaking. They were not lies, they were warnings. And we did not listen. The survivors of the last stand scattered. Some fled into uncharted space, hoping to find safety beyond the reach of humanity. Some surrendered their worlds without a fight, placing offerings of resources at the edge of space, praying the humans would pass them by. Others simply waited in fear, believing nothing could save them. But the humans did not act as conquerors. They did not build empires or demand thrones. They did not call themselves rulers of the galaxy. Instead, they moved from world to world, striking, burning, leaving only silence. And in that silence, the survivors began to understand. Humanity had not come to rule. Humanity had come to remind. Everywhere, whispers spread. The galaxy laughed, and now the laughter is gone. The galaxy mocked, and now the screams remain. The galaxy forgot, and now the lesson is learned too late. Children no longer played with jokes of humans. They sang songs of fear, lullabies that warned them not to look at the stars too long, lest the humans stare back. The Senate Hall was empty, its marble floors cracked, its proud arches broken. The chamber where senators once mocked Kalian now echoed only with wind. The empire of arrogance was gone, crushed not only by human weapons but by its own blindness. Kalian walked the ruins of that hall, his old steps heavy. He touched the cracked stone and whispered, "You laughed until the end," and the end came swiftly. His heart ached with sorrow, not triumph. He had been right. But what use was truth when the galaxy lay in ashes far away? Admiral Tharn's name was remembered by fragments of survivors. They told stories of his bravery, of how he stood unbroken even when defeat was certain. His last words became a saying among scattered soldiers. "We do not fight for victory. We fight so the stars remember us." But even those words carried the weight of despair. Humanity, meanwhile, moved like the tide, unhurried, unstoppable. Their black ships drifted through the void, never boasting, never explaining. Their silence was more terrifying than any declaration of war. It was the silence of certainty, of a predator that no longer needed to prove its strength. Kalian, in his final days, wrote his last record, his words simple, carved into stone so they could not be erased. Let the next age remember, humanity is not a myth, humanity is not a legend. Humanity is the fire waiting in the dark. If ever they return again, do not laugh, do not mock, do not forget. When he finished, he looked at the stars one last time. His eyes filled with sorrow. "We were warned," he whispered. "We were warned, and we did not believe. The lesson is learned too late." He closed his eyes, and the stars outside burned brighter. And so the galaxy carried on, broken, trembling, scattered. The survivors rebuilt in fear, their every word carrying the memory of the storm that had passed. The legends of humanity were no longer carved in old stone. They were carved in the ashes of empires. In the ruins of proud worlds, the galaxy had laughed. But laughter cannot stop fire, the galaxy had mocked. But pride cannot shield against truth. The galaxy had forgotten. But forgetting cannot erase destiny. Humanity had returned. Humanity had burned their name into eternity. And the galaxy finally understood the lesson, but it was the lesson too late.